This has to be the worst time travel story ever made.
Hey guys, and welcome to another Ranger Rant. I'm Archer9234. Today I'll be discussing episode 34 from MMPR Season 3 titled Alien Rangers of Aquatar Part 1. Now this episode is not adapted from any Super Sentai episode at all. This episode is entirely American-made footage only. Now the episode resumes right where we left off from the previous episode where Lord Zed, Rita, Goldar, and Rito have successfully reversed time, where Lord Zed and everyone remember all their memories, and of course have grown large and are basically attacking the city, while they're taking advantage of the situation where, since this is back in time, all the Rangers are reverted back to kids. Now unfortunately this episode is filled with a whole bunch of confusing problems and issues dealing with time travel, how certain things work, why are certain things this way, and so forth. Now while Lord Zed and Rita are attacking the city, the Rangers can't actually use their communicators to actually contact Zordon, and Billy basically says, well, because we don't have access to our powers anymore, the communicators don't function anymore. What? When did this happen? If you remember in the back at the beginning of the series, the communicators were built by Billy and not by Zordon and Alpha, and they basically simply link to the command center and actually also tap inside the teleportation system. But other than that, they simply have their own power source and never ran off the Power Rangers' powers before. So this explanation of why the Rangers couldn't contact the command center doesn't make any sense, and it was basically just a bad plot point, especially what happens later on in the episode. Now, while the Rangers figure out what to do, Rito and everyone else begins their attack on downtown Angel Grove. The cool thing though is that they did spend the extra money to actually, film all the giant US footage. Again, they're reusing the giant set that was back in the beginning of Season 2 with the Thunder Megazord being blown up and so forth. It was nice to see that. And they also spent the extra money on all the extra people, the city under destruction. However, the problem comes with that the US team really can never film convincing giant footage at all. If you remember back in Season 2 when the Thunder Megazords were destroyed, you can always clearly see it's just simply a guy in the suit outside on a city set. For whatever reason, the US team could never perfectly match what Japan does always whenever they do the giant fights. It's particularly even more obvious where Lord Zed and Rita, they just really do not fit that well as being giants. Now unfortunately, since the communicators don't work, the only other option the Rangers have is to basically go on foot to head to the command center. Unfortunately, since the command center is located in the desert, this is probably going to take hours or even days in order to get there on foot. Now eventually Lord Zed and everyone else get interrupted by Master Vile because again, Lord Zed and Rita have been doing stupid things. They've been attacking the city while Master Vile was setting up a big, huge plan in the background in order to stop Zordon and the Power Rangers once and for all. So of course Master Vile forced Lord Zed and Rita to return to their normal size. The surprising thing though is that Rito actually grew a brain for a change in this episode. Normally Rito, for pretty much along with Goldar, are basically the bumbling idiots for the majority of Season 3. He actually saw that the Rangers were trying to head to the command center, and he was like, well, I should actually go and get the power coins from the Power Rangers since they're basically defenseless at this point in time. Now, while the Rangers on foot heading through the city and trying to reach the command center, they actually bump into Bulk and Skull. Bulk and Skull have never changed across their entire life. They've always been punks, they've always been rude. But this scene is basically meant to try to explain to the audience how this time travel episode makes any sense. Unfortunately, the writers did try to make a good and decent explanation, but a lot of things just don't make any sense at all. Now, the things that do make sense in the episode is that Bulk and Skull would not know who Adam, Rocky, and Aisha are. That makes sense because, again, they've come from other areas around the world. They simply moved to Angel Grove later on. Now, another issue is that since this is time travel, even though the Power Rangers' power coins protected all their memories, and that's the reason why they all remember what has been going on up to this point, the problem is that how come Adam, Catherine, Aisha, and Rocky are still in Angel Grove? They should have been transported back to where they were simply growing up and actually not been in Angel Grove. Another major gripe of the episode is that how come the power coins don't work? Again, I understand this is a time travel issue where they've gone back in time, but that doesn't mean the power coins can't work. Granted, the power coins have been reverted back to the original Dinosaurs coins, and of course, the Green Ranger coin doesn't work, nor would the White Ranger coin exist. Another glaring issue about the time travel episode, this could have been also the mark of the return of Trini, Jason, and Zach. Granted, it would have been only kid versions of them, but at least the characters would have been back into the show because again, those are the original Power Rangers. They lived in Angel Grove. So why aren't they in the actual episode? There's just so many time travel issues that just don't make any sense. They're extremely confusing. Things are changed to just simply fit with the plot. It just boggles your mind. Now, unfortunately, since the Rangers don't have access to their powers, Rito takes advantage of this situation and actually, attempts to attack the kids with the Tengus. Unfortunately, this entire fight scene was just basically supposed to be, comedy relief and trying to be very funny because, again, since the Rangers are kids, they really can't fight the Tengus, and so they really couldn't do much. A lot of the jokes during the scene just don't really make any sense. They were going a little bit too far with the slapstick. For example, when Aisha and Adam threw the steel girder at the Tengus that were flying, it didn't really make any sense that they could lift that up that high, and especially when Aisha gave one of the Tengus a potted plant. While the Rangers are trying to fight off all the Tengus and Rito, Master Vile forcibly teleports the Tengus and Rito back to Lord Zed's lair, obviously in order to begin his second phase of the plan. Now, there's one particular thing that kind of bugged me in the episode, is that now Rito was the reason why he was going after the kids was because he wanted to get the power coins from the Rangers. Now, the problem is, since the Rangers are back in time, wouldn't technically the power coins be inside the command center? Because again, the episode specifically establishes that all the memories of the Rangers, the monsters, and Zordon Alpha are retained. However, everything that they were doing during this point in time were in their exact places. So of course the power coins should have been inside the command center since there were no Rangers currently using them. Now, unfortunately, at this time, a group of police officers came in with their car and basically caught the kids being outside. Now, this is one of the major issues I had with the episode. Now, this episode was supposed to be a continuation of, Master Vile's plan, Lord and Zed, getting back at the Rangers. But unfortunately, the episode wasn't actually focused on this aspect of the show. This episode basically was to focus on the comedy aspect of Rito and the Tengus and the Rangers dealing with being kids. So this episode basically felt more like Home Improvement rather than a Power Ranger episode. Now, Billy tried to talk to the police officers saying that they don't know who they are and they were actually the Power Rangers. Granted, the police officers would never believe this story. One, the Power Rangers don't exist at this point in time in the show. Two, it was a really bad idea to actually do this because, again, even if they do correct the timeline and restore everything back to the present day, Bulk of Skull could have remembered what has happened in the past because, again, they're changing history, so they could have remembered that Billy said that they were the Power Rangers. Unfortunately, while most of the Rangers are being rallied up and sent to the police station, we head back to Lord Zed's palace and we basically see that Master Vile has this special explosive device and they basically are going to take advantage of, since the Rangers can't actually teleport to the command center, they actually have to go to the command center on foot and actually will follow them in order to plant the bomb. While this is going on, Master Vile told Finster to figure out who's the best monster of the group. Now, this scene was very confusing because, again, we're seeing all the various monsters that were actually in Season 3 and were actually blown up. Granted, since we're back in time, these monsters would have been revived. How come none of the monsters from Season 1 or 2 are in the episode? It doesn't really make any sense why only some of the monsters from Season 3 are in here, but not the other ones. Now, we head back to Earth and we basically see that Billy, Aisha, Adam, Rocky are all inside the police station, basically waiting for their parents to get picked up. Now, this scene, of course, is supposed to be comedy, funny, lightheartedness for the episode, but again, it drags the episode down. We don't really care about this aspect of the Power Rangers where they're actually waiting for their parents. Another thing that could have been a lot easier is that why didn't Billy actually, call his mother to pick them up? I mean, they would have gotten in trouble, granted, but they would have been out of the police issue. But in order to get the other Rangers out of the police station, Tommy and Catherine had to actually pose as Billy's mother in order to get them out of there. I personally hated this scene. It really didn't make any sense. It felt stupid. It felt forced. Now, while Tommy and Catherine are trying to get the Rangers out of the police station, we finally head to Alpha and Zordon inside the command center. We basically find out that Alpha and Zordon's memories are perfectly okay, just like the Rangers. They actually remember what they were doing. Now, here comes another issue about this episode. Now, the reason why Alpha couldn't actually contact the Rangers and deal with the situation was all because they unplugged the power to the vacuum cleaner. Now, this has to be one of the most ridiculous plot devices ever in PR history. I mean, a vacuum? They could have thought of various other things. They could have said, well, maybe at this point in time, the command center was powered down and Alpha was in a sleep mode and Zordon had to turn everything back on, so they had to simply reboot everything and it would have taken time. Another issue that it brings up, that whole explanation of where Billy said our communicators are tied into the power coins didn't need to be said at all because, again, since the command center was powered down, they couldn't contact him in the first place. So what was that point of that explanation at all? Now, eventually, when Tommy and Catherine get the Rangers out of the police station, they finally head to the command center on foot. And of course, Goldar and Rito are enacting their second phase of the plan by trying to follow the Rangers. This is one of the rare cases where actually enemies are actually using their brain, because a lot of times in past episodes, they would have never have thought of this. Now, after Alpha realizes that the vacuum cleaner is the cause of the power outage in the command center, they simply basically reboot the system, and basically the viewing globe locks onto the Rangers, and of course the Rangers are immediately teleported to the command center, and of course everyone is relieved and happy that they've reunited. Now, of course, since the Rangers are kids, Zordon pretty much doesn't really have that many options. Again, the Rangers, for whatever reason, don't have access to their original power coins, even though technically they should be able to use the power coins. They do exist at this point in time. Now, of course, since Zordon and the Rangers are pretty much out of options, Alpha brings up, why don't we contact the alien Rangers on Aquatar? And we basically get a backstory of the alien Rangers on Aquatar. They're fish-like people. They need a specific amount of water in order to survive. But since Zordon has really no other option, he has to simply send a distress signal to Aquatar at this point in time in order to call the alien Rangers to Earth. Now, unfortunately, while this is going on, Rito and Goldar had gotten close enough to the command center where they were actually able to locate it. Now, the cool thing, though, is that Rito and Goldar were actually in front of the real command center. Now, for the people who don't know, the command center does exist in real life. It actually is a church, and the show hasn't actually been to the original church shooting location since the actual pilot. Now, while Zordon sends out the distress signal, the beam that comes out of the command center is going through space, and of course, this is various stock footage of shots. For example, when the beam is going through space and we see the star background, that background is actually from the episode where they crossed over the Power Rangers to the Masked Rider series. And eventually the distress signal heads to Aquatar, and of course we finally get our very small glimpse of the alien Rangers on the viewing globe. Now, for this episode, I have to give the episode a 1 out of 5. I mean, this episode was absolutely atrocious. I hated it when I was young. I still hate it to this day. There's just too many confusing plot points that don't make any sense. It was a really good premise. It was a really cool introduction to the rest of Rita's family. We see her father, Master Vile. It was cool to see that, you know, there was someone more powerful that Lord Zed had to basically, you know, couldn't say anything to with. But the aspect of the time traveling was totally messed up. One, the power coin fiasco doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, why can't the Rangers use the power coins? Granted, they would be the Dino coins. There is no saying that a Ranger can't be a kid. In fact, a couple of years later, Justin became the Blue Turbo Ranger. So again, that confirms that Rangers can be kids regardless. Another thing that just really doesn't make any sense is with the issue with Aisha, Adam, Rocky, and Catherine. Technically, since this is a back in time issue and only their memories are kept, they should not be in Angel Grove at all, including Tommy. They should be in their respective places where they grew up. Another thing I have to really complain about is the whole comedy thing in the episode. The episode was mostly filled with comedic moments. It was trying to be a crossover of Family Matters, which was kind of obvious from the blatant police officer guy looking like Carl Winslow, and especially the whole plot issue with, you know, oh, we unplugged the entire command center by just using a vacuum cleaner. I mean, are you serious? That has to be got to be the most stupidest writing ever in PR history. Another thing I have to complain about, they could have brought back Trini, Zach, and Jason. Granted, it would have been kids, but at least the characters would have been in the episode, and we could have gotten an explanation of how the team met each other. We get a loose explanation of like, okay, Billy knows Bulk and Skull, so maybe the Rangers actually met when they're really young kids. What do you guys personally think about this episode? Do you think the episode was, kind of unique in its way? Because again, they went back to the kind of kid formula, so we're actually getting different takes on the characters. Or do you agree with me that the episode had potential, but was totally blown and wasted on totally idiotic things? The command center running on one power cord that had to be plugged into a vacuum cleaner? Of course, leave your comments below on what you think on this episode. And of course, leave your suggestions below on what future episodes you would like me to review. For next week's rant, I'll be continuing the review with Alien Rangers of Aquatar Part 2. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys right back here next week.